the man who sued God and won. Every crime has a sentence. Every sentence has an enforcer. And tonight, at the River Jabbok, the enforcer has found his man. What I'm about to show you isn't a religious story. It's a court case. The most classified legal proceeding in human history, buried in plain sight for 3,000 years, disguised as a wrestling match. This is the night a man named Jacob, wanted criminal, serial fraudster, condemned to die, filed an appeal against heaven itself, and won. By the time the sun rises, he will walk away with a new name, a new identity, and a binding decree from the highest court in existence. But he will also carry a wound that proves something terrifying. The universe operates on law, not mercy. On legal procedure, not miracles. Tonight, we're going to crack open the file. The defendant. Let's start with the accused, Jacob. The name itself means deceiver or supplanter, the one who grabs the heel, who trips you up, who takes what isn't his. And that's not poetic. That's his actual criminal record. Crime number 1. He defrauded his own twin brother, Esau, out of his birthright. Esau came back from hunting, exhausted and starving, and Jacob withheld food until Esau signed over his inheritance rights. That's not a trade. That's exploitation under duress. Crime number 2. He conspired with his mother, Rebekah, to commit identity fraud against his blind, dying father, Isaac. Jacob dressed up as Esau, lied directly to his father's face, and stole the patriarchal blessing, a binding legal decree in ancient culture. This wasn't just deception. This was theft of an irrevocable covenant. And Esau? He vowed to kill him, not out of anger, out of justice. Because in that world, Jacob had committed a capital offense. So Jacob ran. He fled to his uncle Laban's house and stayed there for 20 years. 20 years in exile. 20 years working, scheming, building wealth. But exile isn't freedom. It's a delay of sentencing. And now, 2 decades later, the delay is over. Jacob receives word that Esau is coming to meet him. With 400 men. 400. That's not a family reunion. That's an execution squad. Before we go further, if you're starting to see these ancient texts in a completely different light, do me a favor. Subscribe to Testament Tales TV and hit that notification bell. Because what we're uncovering here is just the beginning of how deep this legal framework goes. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Jacob is camped at the River Jabbok, the boundary between exile and home. He is about to cross back into the land where Esau waits, and he knows exactly what that means. So he does what any desperate defendant does when the sentence is approaching. He tries to negotiate. He sends his servants ahead with gifts, hundreds of goats, sheep, camels, cattle, wave after wave of offerings designed to appease Esau, to soften the blow, to buy himself time. Then he sends his wives, his children, his entire household. He divides them into groups and sends them across the river ahead of him, creating a human buffer between himself and his executioner. And then, once everyone is gone, Jacob is alone on the riverbank. This is the detail everyone misses. He didn't stay behind to pray. He didn't stay to meditate or prepare his heart. He stayed because he was terrified. He stayed because crossing that river meant facing the consequences of everything he'd done. The text says he was alone, but let's be precise. He was in a holding cell the night before judgment. the final hours before sentencing, and he knew it. This is not a spiritual retreat. This is death row. And then, in the darkness, someone attacks him. Not approaches. Attacks. The text says, a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. But here's what we need to understand. This was not a friendly sparring match. This was not a mystical encounter initiated by Jacob. This was an assault. Jacob didn't go looking for this fight. The fight came looking for him. And who was the attacker? The text is deliberately vague. It says, a man. But later, Jacob will name the place Peniel, which means face of God, because he says, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The prophet Hosea will later identify the attacker as an angel. The book of Genesis itself suggests this being had divine authority. But here's the key. The attacker wasn't there to bless Jacob. He was there to execute him. Think about it. Why would a divine being show up in the middle of the night and physically assault someone unless there was a legal reason to do so? This wasn't a test of faith. This wasn't a spiritual growth moment. This was enforcement. The enforcer had come to carry out the sentence. Jacob's crimes were recorded. His guilt was established. The earthly executioner, Esau, was already en route. But there was a problem. Jacob was also the carrier of a covenant. He was the grandson of Abraham, the son of Isaac, the one through whom the promise was supposed to continue. So heaven had a legal dilemma. How do you execute a guilty man who is also contractually obligated to fulfill a divine mandate? You send an enforcer to resolve it. Now here's where it gets stunning. Jacob fights back. But he doesn't fight to win. He can't win. The text makes it clear that the being he's wrestling with is far stronger than he is. At any moment, the enforcer could end him. In fact, later in the fight, the being simply touches Jacob's hip socket and dislocates it with a single motion. That tells you everything. If the enforcer wanted Jacob dead, Jacob would be dead. So why is Jacob still alive? Because he's doing something brilliant. He's not fighting to defeat the enforcer. He's fighting to stay in contact with him. He's holding on. And this is the move that changes everything. Because in the legal system of heaven, there is a procedure for appealing a death sentence. And that procedure requires one thing. You must maintain contact with the court until your case is heard. Jacob can't argue his innocence. He has none. He can't claim he didn't do it. He did. He can't offer restitution. There's no payment large enough for what he's stolen. But he can do one thing. He can refuse to let the enforcer go until a new ruling is issued. The fight goes on all night, hour after hour. Jacob is exhausted. His hip is shattered. He's in agony. But he doesn't let go. Because letting go means the original sentence stands. Letting go means death. As dawn approaches, the enforcer speaks for the first time. Let me go, for the day is breaking. This is a critical moment. The enforcer is not asking permission. He's issuing a command. He has the power to leave whenever he wants. But there's something about the approaching daylight that matters. Something about timing. Something about the legal window that's closing. And Jacob's response is the most important statement in this entire encounter. I will not let you go unless you bless me. Now, on the surface, all this sounds like a desperate beggar asking for a favor. like someone clinging to a celebrity and demanding an autograph. But that's not what's happening here. This is a formal legal motion. The word bless, in ancient Hebrew legal terminology, doesn't just mean say something nice about me. It means to issue a binding decree, a pronouncement that carries the weight of authority, a ruling that changes legal status. Jacob is saying, I will not release my appeal until you issue a new verdict. He's forcing the court to make a decision. And here's the genius of it. By holding on until dawn, Jacob has done something that can't be ignored. He has survived the night. He has endured the enforcement action. He has maintained his appeal through the entire legal window. The court has to respond. If what I'm showing you is blowing your mind right now, you need to subscribe to Testament Tales TV. Hit that subscribe button, because we're decoding an entire hidden legal system that runs through these texts, and this case is just one piece of a much larger framework. You won't find this anywhere else. The enforcer asks Jacob a question. What is your name? This is not small talk. This is a formal identification procedure. In a courtroom, before a verdict can be issued, the defendant must be properly identified. The court must confirm who is standing before it. And Jacob has a choice here. He could lie. He's lied about his identity before. That's literally how he got into this mess. He could claim to be someone else, try to dodge the charges one more time, but he doesn't. He says, Jacob. He states his name, his real name, the name that means deceiver, the name that carries his entire criminal history. He admits who he is. This is a guilty plea, and the moment he does it, everything shifts. Because now the court has what it needs, a verified identity and an admission of guilt. The case can proceed to sentencing, but something has changed. Jacob isn't running anymore. He isn't scheming. He isn't trying to manipulate the outcome. He's standing before the enforcer, broken and wounded, and he's telling the truth. For the first time in his life, Jacob is operating without deception, and that changes the legal equation entirely. The enforcer speaks again. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed. This is the ruling, not a suggestion, not a compliment, not a motivational nickname. This is a legally binding verdict issued by a representative of the highest court. Let's break down what just happened. First, the name change. In ancient legal systems, a change of name represented a change of legal identity. It was how you signaled that someone's status had fundamentally shifted. Jacob, the deceiver, the con man, the guilty party, is no longer on the record. That identity has been legally dissolved. In its place, Israel. The name means he who strives with God, or God strives. It's a name that memorializes this exact moment, this exact legal proceeding. It's a permanent record that on this night, a man appealed his sentence and received a new identity from the court itself. Second, the reason given. You have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed. Prevailed, that's legal language. It doesn't mean you won a fight. It means your case was successful. Your motion was granted. The court ruled in your favor. Jacob didn't overpower the enforcer. He couldn't. But he did something the court recognized as valid. He held on. He endured. He refused to accept the original sentence without forcing a review. And the court honored that. But here's the third element, and it's the one that proves this is a legal proceeding, and not a miracle. the injury, the served sentence. Remember, the enforcer touched Jacob's hip and dislocated it. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't collateral damage from the struggle. That was the sentence being served. Because here's what people miss. The verdict was amended, not erased. Jacob's guilt wasn't overturned, it was resolved. And resolution in a legal system requires penalty. Jacob deserved death. That was the original sentence. But through his appeal, the sentence was reduced, commuted, changed from execution to permanent injury. The dislocated hip is the scar of judgment. It's the proof that the law was satisfied. Jacob will limp for the rest of his life. Every step he takes will remind him of this night. Every time he walks, he'll carry the physical evidence that he stood before the enforcer and survived, but not without cost. This is not grace without justice. This is justice recalibrated. The law demanded payment, and payment was made. Jacob's body bears the mark. Jacob asks the enforcer for his name, but the enforcer refuses to give it. Instead, he blesses Jacob, issues the final decree, and vanishes. And Jacob, limping, wounded, legally reborn, names the place Peniel, the face of God. For I have seen God face to face, he says, and yet my life has been delivered. Delivered, not saved by mercy, delivered by legal process. His life was under sentence, and through a legitimate appeal procedure, that sentence was commuted, and a new verdict was issued. And now, here's the test. Here's the proof that this was a real, binding legal ruling, and not just a mystical experience. Jacob crosses the river. He goes to meet Esau, the man who was coming to kill him with 400 soldiers. And when they meet, Esau doesn't attack. He embraces Jacob. He weeps. He forgives. Why? Because the sentence has already been served. The earthly executor no longer has legal grounds to carry it out. The heavenly court has issued a new ruling, and that ruling supersedes Esau's claim. Jacob even says something startling to Esau. To see your face is like seeing the face of God, because you have received me favorably. He's directly comparing Esau's acceptance to the enforcer's verdict. Because in Jacob's mind, they're part of the same legal resolution. The heavenly ruling has manifested in earthly reconciliation. The case is closed. Listen, if you're still watching, if you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person who needs to subscribe to Testament Tales TV right now. Because this is not the only case buried in these texts. There are others. Appeals, trials, legal transfers, binding contracts, enforcement actions, all hidden in plain sight. And we're going to decode every single one. Subscribe now, so you don't miss a single revelation. So what does this case teach us about how the universe actually operates? It reveals something most people never consider. The cosmos is governed by law, not randomness. There is a legal framework, a system of justice, a court with authority, enforcers with jurisdiction, and procedures that must be followed. Jacob's story isn't a one-off miracle. It's a documented case that shows us the rules. Rule 1. Guilt is recorded. Jacob's crimes didn't disappear just because time passed. The record was maintained, the sentence was issued, and when the time came, enforcement was dispatched. Rule 2. There is a legal process for appeal. Jacob didn't have to accept the original sentence. He had the right to contest it. But contesting it required action. He had to hold on. He had to endure. He had to refuse to let the process end without a hearing. Rule 3. The court can issue new verdicts. The original sentence is not always final. If the conditions are met, if the procedure is followed, the court has the authority to amend the ruling. Rule 4. Justice still requires payment. Even when the verdict is changed, the law must be satisfied. Jacob's hip was the payment. The injury was the proof that the legal system maintained its integrity. This is not a universe where people get away with things. It's also not a universe where people are crushed without recourse. It's a universe where law operates with precision, where appeals are possible, and where new rulings can be issued, but never without cost. Jacob walked away from Peniel with a limp, and that limp stayed with him for the rest of his life. The text even tells us that to this day, the people of Israel don't eat the tendon attached to the hip socket, because that's where Jacob was struck. That's not a dietary preference. That's a memorial, a permanent reminder passed down through generations that one night a guilty man appealed his sentence and won, but carried the scar forever. And here's the final piece that makes this story so devastating. Jacob becomes Israel. The entire nation is named after him. The people who will carry the covenant, who will be called God's chosen, who will produce kings and prophets, and eventually the Messiah. They all carry the name of the man who wrestled the enforcer and survived. They are named after the appeal. Every time someone says Israel, they are repeating the verdict. They are memorializing the night the court ruled in favor of a broken, guilty man who refused to let go. For 3,000 years, people have read this story as a mysterious, symbolic encounter, a tale of spiritual struggle, a metaphor for perseverance. But it's not a metaphor. It's a case file. It's the record of a celestial legal proceeding that followed specific procedures, operated under specific laws, and resulted in a specific binding verdict. And if this case exists, if this legal system operates in this one story, then the question becomes, where else is it operating? How many other events in these texts are actually courtroom proceedings disguised as miracles? How many prayers are actually legal motions? How many blessings are actually verdicts? What if the entire biblical narrative is a record of legal transactions between heaven and earth, and we've been reading it wrong the whole time? That's what we're uncovering here at Testament Tales TV. We're not doing devotionals. We're doing forensic investigation. We're cracking open the code and showing you how the system actually works. So here's the question this case leaves us with. If Jacob, a con man, a thief, a deceiver, could file an appeal and receive a new verdict, what does that mean for the rest of us? It means the court is still in session, the legal system is still operational, the procedures are still available, but it also means something more sobering. There is a record, there are enforcers, and sentences are issued. Jacob couldn't escape his guilt by running. He couldn't erase it by making offerings. He couldn't negotiate his way out of it with clever words. The only thing that changed his outcome was direct, physical, unrelenting engagement with the enforcer himself. He had to grab hold and refuse to let go, even when it cost him everything. He had to stay in the fight until the verdict was read. And when it was, he walked away with a new name, a new identity, and a wound that would never heal. The man who sued God didn't win because he was innocent. He won because he understood the system. He knew there was a court. He knew there was a procedure. And he knew that if he could just hold on long enough, if he could just endure the enforcement action and force the case to a hearing, there was a possibility, just a possibility, that the verdict could be changed. And it was, not because the law was broken, but because the law allowed for it. The universe doesn't operate on chaos, it operates on law. Precise, unbreakable, enforceable law. And within that law, there are procedures, there are appeals. There are ways to stand before the court and argue your case. But you have to know they exist. You have to know how to access them. And you have to be willing to hold on, even when the enforcer is crushing you, even when your body is breaking, even when the sentence feels inevitable. Jacob held on, and when the sun rose, he had a new name. If this video just changed the way you see everything, then you absolutely need to subscribe to Testament Tales TV right now. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we are just getting started. There are more cases, more hidden legal proceedings, more cosmic courtroom dramas buried in these ancient texts, and we're bringing every single one of them to light. This is not religion. This is revelation. And you don't want to miss what's coming next. The court is in session, the files are open, and the verdicts are being read. The man who sued God won his case.
Do you have
The question
a
is,
case?
do you even know you have one?